Good morning, everyone. Right now we're looking at Easton's beach after a snowstorm. My first question for everyone, I'm wondering if anyone can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Right now we're looking at Easton's beach in Newport, Rhode Island. My first question, could someone type in the chat if they can hear me? I just want to make sure that the audio is coming through okay. Good morning, everyone. Right now, we're looking at Easton's Beach in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm wondering if anyone could hear me in the audio. You can. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Grania. Glad you can hear me. So right now, we're taking a look at a beach right after a snowstorm. And, you know, when I came in this morning, it's just such a unique sight to see because we don't get these big snowstorms so often anymore. And I just love looking at the ocean after a snowstorm, looking at the beach. I think it's a beautiful thing. And the reason why we're taking a look at it as well is because today we're going to be focusing on a couple topics that have to do with the beach. One is the tides. And right now you can see the waves coming in. And that's part of the tides. And we're also going to be talking about something called beachcombing a little bit, which we've discussed before. But hopefully we're going to go over a few different topics with it as well. That's awesome. This is just such a peaceful moment in my day. I love to do this whenever I can, and I highly recommend if people have time in their busy days, especially now with everything going on, get out there, go into nature, even if it has snowed, you know, it's so gorgeous. Why miss it? So unique. All right, we're starting to get cold though, so I'm gonna shut the door here and we're gonna head into the aquarium, all right? All right, back into our toasty little science lab here. All right, we're gonna head right over here and we're gonna start our lesson. Excellent. Okay, awesome. So today we're going to be learning about tides and beachcombing, and I'm going to show you how that kind of connects. So what I mean by beachcombing is when you go out onto the beach or somewhere on the bay, and you just look for natural items, look for the stuff that lives there. Go out and explore. You can even go out on a snowy day like this, look under the snow. There's going to be so many cool things for you to find. Again, another one of my favorite activities to do. And one thing I like to think about a lot is how that stuff ended up on the beach. How did it get there? Why is it there? You know, obviously it's something that nature does. And I want to think about that a little bit and see how that happens, all right? So the tides are something that I love to teach about. So the definition of tide is the alternating rise and fall of oceans at a particular point, all right? So if you're on a beach, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, you watch the water over time, it comes in, it's higher up on the beach, and then it goes back out. And when it goes back out, a lot of times it leaves all kinds of interesting stuff on there. But I'm thinking, why does that water move up and down? Our planet is crazy. How is this happening? It's such a unique thing. And believe it or not, it's actually controlled by the moon and the sun and the rotation of the earth, along with some other things. But I'm going to start to talk about that a little bit. Now, two major delineations between types of tides. One type we get is called a spring tide, and another type we get is called a neap tide. All right? And like I said, it has to do with the sun and the moon and the earth and the rotation. So first, let's take a look at what a spring tide would be. So taking a look at this drawing here, this is my wonderful drawing. I'm not much of an artist, but hopefully you guys can understand what I got going on here. We have the sun, we have the moon, and we have the earth, right? So the earth rotates around the sun, right? And then the moon rotates around the earth. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of gravity, but gravity is that force that pulls things towards other objects, all right? So the reason we could stand here on planet Earth and I'm not floating away is gravity pulling me down to the planet. Now the moon and the sun, they also exert gravity as well. So, and as crazy as it sounds, they're so far away, that gravity is actually being exerted on our planet from out in space. How do people figure this out, man? It's such a cool thing. Okay, so the moon and the sun are both pulling on the earth, pulling on the earth. And now the earth is really big. That's a hard thing to move. It's pretty stable. But something that can move, that gravity can actually affect, is the water on earth. All right, so again, we have the earth, the moon, and the sun. All right, and in this drawing of a spring tide, this is when the earth, moon, and sun are all in line in their rotation. All right, so they're all in a direct line, and that means the force of gravity is going in one single plane. So what's happening is the pull of gravity on the earth from the moon and the sun is actually pulling the water off of our planet. It's trying to pull it back into the moon and the sun, out into space. All right, but it's not quite strong enough to pull it all the way off. So what happens is that water, it moves a little bit off the planet, it doesn't come all the way off, so you get a bulge on one side of the earth. And that's what we call high tide. When the water is really high up on the shore, that's because the sun and the moon are actually pulling that water away from the earth. Now, a funny thing that happens is we actually see that there is a tidal bulge on the opposite side of the planet at the exact same time as it is on this side. And the reason why is we call this a centrifugal bulge, And that's because the earth is rotating and the water is trying to fling itself off as it rotates, but gravity from the earth is pulling that water back to the planet. And that results in a bulge on the opposite side of the planet. So there's a high tide bulge on this side as well. And a good example of that, if you're ever driving in a car, or if you're sitting on the bus going to school or something like that, and you make a sharp turn on the bus. I don't know if you've ever slid off the seat and kind of gone flying or felt yourself kind of going outwards away from the turn. That's centrifugal force, all right? And that's the same thing that's happening on our planet, causing the high tides on both sides of our planet, all right? So we call this side a gravitational bulge because gravity is causing that bulge. And then this is the centrifugal bulge because that's being caused by rotation of the Earth. And then you can see too, this is when we have a new moon, right, in this type of spring tide, because the moon is in between the sun and Earth. So that means this side of the moon is getting irradiated by the sunlight, and it's bright, but this side is completely dark. That's when you go out in the sky and you don't see the moon at all at night, if it's not clouds, right? If it's a not cloudy night, you don't see the moon, that means it's a new moon. You can't really see it at all. But as everything rotates, the sun kind of shines at a different angle on the moon, and you can see it as crescent moon, full moon, all those sorts of things. Now, another way we get a spring tide is, again, when these gravitational forces are at their strongest, and they're in a line. Once again, those forces are pulling in the same line. So you can see we have the sun, then the Earth, and then the moon. All right, so again, they're still pulling in the same plane, so you're going to see those large bulges on either side. Now, this is when we call it a full moon, all right? Because at this point, the sun is so big and bright, it's shining on the moon. We can see the whole thing on this side of the planet when you're looking at it, and you can see that full moon. And again, this is, the moon and the sun and the earth are all rotating around each other, and that's causing that water kind of sloshed all over the planet in this high and low tide. Now there's another type of tide that we can talk about that's not as big. So these are the ones that you get, they're going to be very large tides. You're getting very big tides when you have things like a new moon or a full moon, because all of those forces are in a line. Now there's another type of tide called a neap tide. A neap tide, you also get those high and low tides, but they're not quite as big. And the reason that they're not quite as big is because the sun, the earth, and the moon, they are no longer in a perfect line with each other. They're not pulling on the same plane. They're in separate planes, right? So you can see the moon is pulling on the earth this direction, the sun is pulling on the earth this direction, okay? So you still get those tidal bulges, but they're just not quite as big, and you still get those high and low tides as well. So you can see, we would call this one a lunar tide, because the moon is pulling on the water in this situation. You're getting that same centrifugal bulge on the opposite side. And then you're getting it again with the sun. We call this a solar tide, as the sun is pulling, and then again you get that bulge there. Now in this situation, where the sun is shining on the moon, this would be a first quarter moon. So if you're only seeing like half of the moon, right, that's when you have a neap tide, okay? So the tide, you're still going to get the high tides and the low tide. They're not going to be as drastic. They're not going to be as big, all right? So the next thing I want to take a look at is this drawing here. So in this drawing, let's imagine the yellow stuff. That's a nice sandy beach in the bottom of the bay there. This blue line is the level of the water, all right? And then right now, this drawing is gonna represent low tide, all right? So when the tide's at its lowest. And then high tide is gonna be all the way up here when the tide moves up along the shore and it's at its highest. And then everything in here is what we call the tidal range. So when that tide goes from low to high, it goes up higher, and all of this life, it's in that water. It goes up along the shore. You get all these like fish and crabs and clams, all kinds of stuff that'll go into that tidal range as it increases. But then when the tide goes back down during that next tidal cycle, it's actually going to leave a lot of stuff stranded on the beach there. That's how that stuff gets there, okay? So that's when you really want to go beach combing, is usually at low tide, because that's where you're going to see the most stuff kind of washed up on the beach there. So a flood current is when the water's flooding into land, and an ebb current is when it's gone away. So once it's completely gone as low it's going to go for the day, great time to look at these tides and currents, all right? And I'm hoping this all makes sense to you all. Now, what I have done is over the years here at the aquarium, myself and Jess Bornstein, who's filming right now, and all of our different staff and interns and volunteers, we've collected all kinds of interesting things that we have found on the beach so we could teach about them. So I have a table laid out over here. Let's go take a look. Excellent. Okay, so this table here, it's actually just kind of covered with all different things that I have found washed on the beach over the years. Believe it or not, all of this stuff is stuff that we have found on Easton's beach before. So let's just take a quick look. I want everyone just to take a minute to observe the different things that we have found. And this is what I want you all to try and interact with us a little bit. If you see something interesting and you want me to talk about it, I'd love for you to shout it out. And I'm going to give you guys a second to look. Now the book, I didn't find the book on the beach. We bought the book because it's a cool book. But it's about one of the animals I found on the beach. And if I don't hear anyone shouting out in the text there, you can type it right in the chat box there. I'm just going to start talking about stuff. And we're only going to go over a couple animals because we only have a few minutes here, it looks like. But we got some good stuff. All right, so I'm going to talk about one of my favorite things that I found on the beach here. And let me tell you, this was a surprise. This right here, it's a really, really cool thing. All right? It's a skull. It's a skull from a green sea turtle. I'm actually looking at your phone right now, Jess, and you have a picture of a green sea turtle on your phone. That's so cool. So this is a skull from a green sea turtle. When it was alive, this turtle was about 300 pounds. And the reason I know that is because it washed up on shore deceased on Easton's beach here. We buried that turtle for about 3 years, and then we dug it up, and we've been cleaning the skeleton, and this is the first cool piece that we have done. Let me tell you, that was a stinky process.
Adam, we actually are getting a couple questions. People want to know what animal is in the jar.
Oh, the jar, yes. Let's go talk about the jar. So, Jess, if you can look at that. So that jar there has something in it called a common mantis shrimp. One day, I went out into our beach combing zone, and let me tell you, there were mantis shrimp flipping and flopping all over the place on the beach, which is a little scary because a mantis shrimp can hit with the same force as a .22 caliber pistol. They're very strong. Fishermen call them thumb splitters around here because they can literally split your thumb right open. But there's a bunch of them washed up on the beach, so we were able to rescue a bunch. The ones that looked really healthy we threw back into the bay, or gently placed back into the bay. There was a couple looking not so hot, so we brought them into the aquarium. And then there was a few that were deceased, so I preserved one of them so we can learn more about them and talk about them. This was years ago. One fun fact about mantis shrimp, they have the most complex eyes of any animal on the entire planet. There's 3 different color spectrums that make up all of our vision and all the colors that we can see. Their vision is made up of 16 different colors that they can observe. if you did the math out, they can actually see about 10 times as many colors as we can see. And if you want to take a look here, Jess, in the book, that's why I have this page open, we could see, I don't know if it's coming through there, you could see a picture of a mantis shrimp's eyes, and it's just such a cool thing. I always tell people, try to imagine a color you've never seen before. It makes my brain want to explode. So cool.
We do have another question. Susie wants to know what this beautiful pink shell is right up front.
Let's see, which one? This one? Mm-hmm. So, okay, this one right here, that is actually a deep sea scallop, all right? So this is from a deep sea scallop. If you've ever had like a big old scallop at a restaurant, this is the kind of scallop that it is. And these live out actually further deep into the Atlantic Ocean, which is really amazing that we found it here, technically in the bay. Now, Easton's beach that we were just looking at, it's one of the most highly active beaches in the bay as far as wave action goes, wave energy, ocean energy. So we're getting a ton of input from the ocean. So we get a really wide diversity of shells and interesting things that wash up here all the time. So this is from a deep sea scallop. You can kind of see right here where the abductor muscle was. That's that big muscle that we eat, that big round white muscle when you have a scallop. And then all throughout here, that's all the different organs and things that would be there. But they get really big. And to put it into contrast, that's a bay scallop. That's about as big as a bay scallop gets, give or take. Bay scallops are, you eat the same part, but it's teeny tiny. These are the ones that live in the bay, and then these would be open ocean. Excellent, some of my favorite stuff. And then you don't always find things in the ocean that are from the ocean. Sometimes you find things from other parts of the land, or who knows how it got there, they get washed up. So even, for example, something like this. One day we just found a wing from a bird right on the beach there. You get all kinds of interesting evidence of life in the area. And then when you find something, you can look it up. Does this thing live in Rhode Island? How far did this travel? You can get a lot of information. Now, this is a wing from a mallard duck. You can tell because it's beautiful iridescent blue and the white kind of lines on the other sides of the wing here. Mallard duck is a very common duck. This could be from a lot of different places, and definitely they live in Rhode Island year-round too, so that could be from one of them. Really, really interesting stuff. Well, awesome. I hope everyone learned a few things and had some fun with us. If you're looking for ways to get involved with helping with issues related to tides, one thing you can do, you can actually download, I have it written right here, our MyCoast app. So there's an app called MyCoast you can download, and basically what you can do is during the highest high tides, when you see flooding in different areas, you can go out and take pictures and upload it to the app. The reason this is useful, during a really high tide, you can kind of make an estimation on where sea levels are going to be in the future, right? Because as our oceans become warmer, they actually expand and they go up higher on the shore. And you can see where flooding is on the shore. That's all being caused by climate change, the burning of fossil fuels that ends up warming up our oceans. So by taking these pictures, you can really map out what's going to be happening in the future with our tides. And it's very helpful to scientists, even scientists that save the day, like Wendy Ferguson, our restoration manager, who works with this app all the time. And it's really helping her make predictions on where things are going and how we can help people figure out what to do as far as ultra-high tides are concerned, what are called king tides. All right, excellent. Well, I had a ton of fun showing you all this stuff. If you have further questions, feel free to type them there, or you can always email us as well. And if you enjoyed this, definitely like it, share it with your friends. You can go to our website, you can go to YouTube if you weren't able to see the whole thing, and we're going to post it up there in a little while as well. So I hope everyone had a great time, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks so much.